you fell in love with someone who didn't exist. Not because they lied to you, not because they wore a mask or performed a role or hid their true nature, but because you built them out of your needs, your wounds, your fantasies. You projected onto them qualities they never had. You saw in them the missing part of yourself, the part you lost, the part you buried, the part you've been searching for your entire life. And when they failed to be that, when their humanity emerged, when they disappointed you, when they became real instead of ideal, you called it betrayal. But the betrayal was yours from the beginning.
Because you never loved them. You loved an image, an archetype, a projection of what Carl Jung called the anima or animus, the unconscious image of the opposite gender that lives inside you, shaped by your earliest relationships, your unmet needs, your buried desires, your secret fantasies about who could complete you. And when you meet someone who resembles that image, not in their actual being, but in the way they activate something ancient and hungry inside you, you feel it. The pull, the magnetic attraction, the sense that you've known them forever, that this is fate, that this is destiny, that this is soul recognition, that finally someone sees you, someone understands you, someone is exactly what you've been waiting for.
But Jung would say it's not fate. It's not destiny. It's not the universe conspiring to bring you together. It's psychology. It's your unconscious seeing its own reflection in another person. It's projection. And until you see the projection for what it is, until you recognize that what you're falling in love with is not them, but an internal image you've been carrying since childhood, you will keep falling in love with fantasies. And you will keep being devastated when those fantasies become human. Before we go further, ask yourself this. Have you ever fallen in love with someone instantly? Have you ever felt that overwhelming certainty, this is the one, based on almost nothing? A conversation, a glance, a feeling you couldn't explain.
And have you ever watched that certainty collapse? Watched the person you idealized turn into someone you no longer recognize? Watched the love that felt so pure, so right, so inevitable, dissolve into confusion, disappointment, resentment? You blamed them. You told yourself they changed. They weren't who you thought they were. They let you down. They failed you. But Jung would ask, did they fail you? Or did your projection collapse? Because the person you fell in love with was never real. They were a screen, a vessel, a living symbol of something you needed so desperately that you couldn't see them as they actually were. You saw only what you needed to see. And when reality finally broke through, when their flaws, their contradictions, their separate selfhood emerged, you felt betrayed.
Not by them, by your own unconscious, by the image that promised completion, but delivered only another human being. This is the story of the Anima and Animus, and it is the story of almost every passionate, irrational, devastating love you've ever experienced. Carl Jung was born in 1875 in Switzerland, into a family shadowed by secrets, silence, and unspoken tensions. His father was a pastor, distant and depressed, carrying a faith he no longer believed in. His mother was strange, erratic, speaking in two voices, one conventional and motherly, the other dark and mysterious, as if possessed by something ancient. Jung grew up feeling split, between worlds, between selves, between the daylight world of reason and the nighttime world of dreams, symbols, visions. He became a psychiatrist. He studied the human mind.
And he noticed something that fascinated and disturbed him. His patients, especially those suffering from deep psychological disturbances, often spoke of inner figures, not real people, but presences, voices, images that felt alive. Men would dream of mysterious women who guided them, seduced them, terrified them. Women would dream of powerful men who protected them, dominated them, challenged them. And these figures were not random. They had patterns, archetypes. Jung began to wonder, what if these inner figures were not symptoms of illness, but structures of the psyche? What if every person carries within them an unconscious image of the opposite gender, an image shaped by experience, by culture, by biology, by the collective unconscious itself? He called this image, in men, the anima, the inner feminine, and in women, the animus, the inner masculine. Not literal representations of men or women, but psychological counterparts, the soul image, the part of you that is not your conscious identity, but its complement, its shadow, its hidden depth. And Jung believed that this inner figure, this anima or animus, shapes who you fall in love with. Because when you meet someone who resembles this unconscious image, something ancient wakes up inside you. Not rational attraction, not conscious choice, but recognition. The psyche saying, "This is it. This is what I've been waiting for." But here's the problem. The anima and animus are not real people. They are fantasies, idealized images, composites built from your mother, your father, your early experiences of love and rejection, your culture's myths about men and women, your own unmet needs and buried potentials. And when you project this image onto a real person, when you fall in love with someone because they seem to embody your anima or animus, you are not falling in love with them. You are falling in love with yourself. Or rather, with a part of yourself you've never been able to own. Jung described the anima in men as the unconscious feminine, often shaped by his relationship with his mother, but also by cultural images of women, by the collective archetypes of the feminine, the muse, the temptress, the nurturer, the witch. A man carries this image within him, often without knowing it, and when he meets a woman who seems to match it, who activates that inner figure, he feels an overwhelming attraction, not because of who she actually is, but because she has become the living symbol of his own soul. The same is true for women. The animus, the inner masculine, takes shape from her father, from the men in her life, from cultural ideals of masculinity, the hero, the protector, the rebel, the sage. And when she meets a man who seems to embody this image, she feels it too. The pull, the certainty, the sense that he is special, different, meant for her. But this love is not based on reality. It is based on projection. And projection, Jung warned, is a kind of possession. You are possessed by your own unconscious. You are living out an internal drama, using another person as the actor in a script they never agreed to play. And when they inevitably fail to play that role, when they reveal themselves to be human, flawed, separate from your fantasy, the love collapses. Not because they failed you, but because the projection could not sustain contact with reality. Jung knew this from his own life. He was married to Emma Jung for over 50 years. She was intelligent, loyal, devoted. She supported his work. She raised their 5 children. She tolerated his long absences, his obsessive focus on his research, his refusal to be a conventional husband, and she tolerated his affair with Tony Wolfe. Tony was everything Emma was not: dark, mysterious, intense. She was Jung's patient first, then his collaborator, then his lover. She understood his theories in ways Emma never could. She activated something in him,
his anima, the inner feminine figure he had been unconsciously searching for, the muse, the soul guide, the woman who seemed to understand the depths of his psyche without needing explanation. Jung believed his relationship with Toni was necessary for his psychological development, that she represented an aspect of his anima he needed to integrate, that loving her was not betrayal but individuation, the process of becoming whole by confronting and integrating the unconscious.
Emma did not see it this way. She suffered, she endured. She watched her husband live openly with another woman, justifying it with psychological theory. And she stayed. Not because she was weak, but because she loved him. Or perhaps because she too was caught in a projection, seeing in Jung the Animus figure, the wise man, the genius, the one who knew truths she could not access. This is the tragedy of projection. It binds both people, the one who projects and the one who is projected upon. Both are trapped in an unconscious drama, playing roles they did not choose, suffering consequences they do not fully understand.
Toni Wolff lived in this triangle for decades. She never married, she devoted her life to Jung's work. And when Jung aged, when his focus shifted, when he no longer needed her in the same way, she became depressed. She withdrew. She died alone, bitter, feeling that the love she had given had never been fully returned. And Jung? He continued his work. He theorized about the Anima and Animus. He wrote about projection. He warned others about the dangers of falling in love with inner images. But he never fully acknowledged the human cost of his own projections, the pain he caused, the women who lived in his shadow, the triangle that shaped and scarred all three of them. This is what Jung understood intellectually, but could not escape personally, that the Anima and Animus are powerful, seductive, and dangerous, that they create the most intense loves and the most devastating collapses, that they promise completion but deliver only more complexity, that they are, in the end, traps as much as they are guides. So what is the anima, really? It is not a person. It is a psychological function, the bridge between your conscious mind and your unconscious. In men, the anima represents the feminine qualities that have been repressed, denied, or undeveloped: emotion, intuition, receptivity, vulnerability, connection. These qualities are not absent in men. They are simply hidden, buried beneath the demands of masculinity, beneath the persona, beneath the ego's need to be strong, rational, in control. And because these qualities are hidden, they are projected outward, onto women.
A man looks at a woman and sees softness, mystery, depth, and he believes these qualities belong to her. But they don't. They belong to him, to the part of him he has never been allowed to develop. And so he falls in love with her, not because of who she is, but because she reflects what he has lost in himself. The same is true for women. The Animus represents the masculine qualities that have been repressed: strength, autonomy, decisiveness, ambition, clarity. And because these qualities are hidden in her, she projects them onto men. She looks at a man and sees confidence, power, authority, and she believes these qualities belong to him. But they don't. They belong to her, to the part of her she has never been allowed to claim. And so she falls in love with him, not because of who he is, but because he embodies what she has not yet become.
This is why the Anima and Animus are so seductive.
They offer a shortcut. Instead of developing these qualities within yourself, instead of becoming whole, integrated, complete, you can simply fall in love with someone who seems to carry them for you. You can live vicariously through them. You can borrow their strength, their softness, their clarity, their mystery. And for a while, it works. For a while, the projection feels real. You feel complete. You feel seen. You feel whole. But it's an illusion, because the qualities you admire in them are not theirs to give. They are yours to develop. And as long as you project them outward, you will remain dependent. You will need that person to feel whole. You will cling to them. You will idealize them. And you will resent them when they fail to be the fantasy you need them to be.
Jung believed this is the central task of mature love, to withdraw your projections, to recognize that the person you fell in love with is not the person standing in front of you, to see them as they actually are, flawed, human, separate, and to love them anyway. Not because they complete you, but because they are real. But this is almost impossible to do, because withdrawing projections is painful. It means facing what you've been avoiding. It means admitting that the love you felt was partly a lie. It means seeing your partner clearly, without the glow of fantasy. And it means confronting the part of yourself you've been projecting onto them, the part you've been too afraid or too ashamed or too unconscious to own.
Most people cannot do this. Most relationships do not survive the collapse of projection. The moment the fantasy breaks, the love dies, and people move on, searching for the next person who will carry the projection, the next Anima figure, the next Animus figure, the next one who will finally be the right one, who will finally complete them, who will finally not disappoint. But the pattern repeats, because the Anima and Animus are not looking for real people. They are looking for symbols, and no real person can be a symbol forever. Jung told a story about a man who came to him in despair. The man had fallen in love with a woman who seemed perfect, intelligent, beautiful, mysterious, everything he had ever wanted. And then, after a few months, she became ordinary. The magic faded. The mystery dissolved. She was just a woman, flawed, human. And he felt cheated. He felt betrayed. He asked Jung, "What happened? Why did the love die?" And Jung said, "The love didn't die. The projection died. You were never in love with her. You were in love with your Anima. And when she stopped being a vessel for your Anima, when she became herself, you couldn't love her anymore. Because you never learned how to love a real person. You only know how to love an image." The man left. Jung never saw him again, but he thought about him often. Because this man's story was not unique. It was the story of almost everyone. The story of projection. The story of the Anima and Animus. The story of falling in love with fantasies and calling it fate. Jung himself struggled with this until the end of his life. His relationship with Emma was stable but distant. His relationship with Tony was passionate but unsustainable. And in his later years, he withdrew. He spent time alone. He built a tower by a lake where he could retreat from the world, from people, from the demands of relationships. And in that solitude, he wrote, he reflected. He tried to understand what he had lived but could not fully resolve. He wrote about the anima and animus not as abstract theory, but as lived experience. He knew the intoxication of projection. He knew the pain of collapse. He knew that love is never simple, that it is always layered with unconscious forces, with archetypal patterns, with the psyche's desperate attempt to become whole by finding its missing parts in another.
And he concluded this, that individuation, the process of becoming yourself, requires integrating the anima or animus, not through projection, but through inner work, by recognizing that the qualities you seek in others are qualities you must develop in yourself, by becoming your own anima, your own animus, by making conscious what has been unconscious, by withdrawing the projection and turning inward. But this is a lonely path, because it means giving up the fantasy that someone out there will complete you. It means accepting that you are the only one who can do that work. It means facing your own incompleteness without using another person as a crutch, a mirror, a savior.
Most people will not walk this path. Most people will keep projecting, keep falling in love with images, keep being disappointed when those images become human, keep searching for the one who will finally be different, the one who will finally stay perfect, the one who will finally not fail. And they will die without ever understanding why love always felt so close and yet so impossible. You know this. You've lived this. You've fallen in love with someone who seemed to be everything, and then, slowly or suddenly, they became ordinary. And you couldn't understand why. You told yourself they changed. They weren't who you thought. They deceived you. But Jung would say, they didn't change. Your projection collapsed. And beneath the projection, there was just a person. A real, flawed, separate person. And you were not in love with a person. You were in love with a fantasy. A need, an image, a part of yourself you refused to own. And the person you loved, they were doing the same to you, projecting their anima or animus onto you, seeing in you qualities you don't actually possess, falling in love with an image. And when you failed to be that image, when your humanity emerged, they felt betrayed too.
This is the double tragedy of projection. Both people are in love with fantasies. Both people are disappointed when reality intrudes. Both people blame the other for failing to be what they never were. And the relationship ends, not because love died, but because love was never really there. Only projection, only need, only the unconscious trying to complete itself through another. So, what is the way out? Jung would say, see it. Recognize the projection. Understand that the person you fell in love with is not the person standing in front of you. That the qualities you admire in them are qualities you need to develop in yourself. That the love you feel is not about them. It's about you, about your anima, about your animus, about the part of yourself you've been searching for in others because you were too afraid to find it within.
And then, if you're brave enough, stay. Not because the fantasy is intact, but because the person is real. And real love, the kind that survives the collapse of projection, is not based on need or fantasy or unconscious hunger. It's based on seeing, on knowing, on choosing to love a person for who they actually are, not for who you need them to be. But this kind of love is rare, because it requires something most people are not willing to give: the willingness to see themselves clearly, to own their projections, to stop blaming their partner for failing to be a fantasy, to do the inner work of integrating the anima or animus instead of outsourcing it to another person.
And even Jung, who understood this better than almost anyone,
struggled with it. He loved Emma. He loved Tony. But he could never fully integrate the love and the projection. He could never fully withdraw the images and see the women clearly. And so he lived in a triangle, a compromise, a half-solution. And when he died, both women were left with the debris of his projections, with the love that was never quite real, with the pain of being seen as symbols instead of selves. This is the cost of the Anima and Animus. They create the deepest attractions, the most intense loves, the most devastating collapses, and most people never understand why. They just feel the pull, the betrayal, the heartbreak, and they move on to the next projection.
The next fantasy, the next person who will surely, finally, be different. But the pattern repeats, because the Anima and Animus are not looking for people, they are looking for completion. And completion is not something another person can give you, it's something you must build within yourself. So ask yourself, who have you been projecting onto? What qualities do you see in them that you refuse to see in yourself? What part of your Anima or Animus have you been outsourcing to another person? And what would it mean to stop, to withdraw the projection, to see them as they are, to face your own incompleteness without using them to fill it?
Jung cannot answer this for you. He could barely answer it for himself. But he can tell you this, that love is not what you think it is, that the person you fell for is not who you think they are, that the attraction you feel is not fate or destiny or soul recognition. It's projection. It's psychology. It's your unconscious trying to become whole by finding its missing parts in another. And until you see this, until you recognize the fantasy for what it is, you will keep falling in love with images, and you will keep being heartbroken when those images become human. The Anima and Animus are not enemies. They are teachers. They show you what you need to develop, what you need to integrate, what you need to become. But they teach through pain, through attraction and collapse, through the devastating realization that the love you thought was real was only a reflection of your own unconscious. And that realization is where real love begins. Not in the fantasy, but in the seeing. Not in the projection, but in the withdrawal of projection. Not in the need, but in the recognition that you are whole, and the person standing in front of you is whole. And love is not about completion. It's about two whole people choosing each other. Not because they need to, but because they see each other and they stay anyway.
This is what Jung offers, not comfort, not easy answers, not a method for finding your soulmate, but the truth, the painful, necessary truth that the person you fell in love with was never real. And neither were you. You were both playing roles, both projecting, both possessed by unconscious images. And the only way out is through the seeing, through the pain, through the collapse of the fantasy, through the integration of what you've been projecting, through becoming, slowly and painfully, the person you've been searching for in others.
The Anima and Animus will never stop calling. They are part of you. They will always create attraction, always generate projection, always pull you toward people who seem to carry what you lack. But you can learn to see it, to recognize it, to understand that the pull is not about them. It's about you. And that understanding changes everything. Not because it makes love easier, but because it makes love real.